Hello, my brethren, my fellow seekers, my fellow believers in the church of 93, 94. I don't know why when I hit record on this thing, I go full like Happy Harry Hard-On all of a sudden. Get like my radio voice on. Dave Horning, who I have known for a very, very, very long time, has come on the show. He was excited. I've been excited to have him on. He is like not just a lifelong friend. He is a lifelong or almost lifelong Tool fan. He loves Tool, but he's no longer like, well, you'll hear him talk. He's not quite as devoted as a disciple as he perhaps once was. He is a grown-ass man. He loves and respects the work of Tool. I don't know that he makes them like a center of his life. But you know what I mean? He's aged and wizened. He's a father now. He has a more realistic perspective on Tool than I think maybe I thought that he did, or at least like based on my perceptions of how he felt about Tool maybe 10, 15 years ago. But he loves Tool. He's here for some Tool talk. Talking Undertow. On their 1994 album, Twice Removed, the band Sloan has a song called Coax Me. And one of the lines from that song is, "It's not the band I hate, it's the fans." And I wouldn't say that I've hated the fans of Tool, but as Dave and I will discuss, there are some fans that, I don't want to say they're problematic. I don't want to like paint all Tool fans with one brush. That's not fair, nor is it accurate. But there are some really strident Tool fans, we'll say that. And there are some Tool fans that maybe made me feel, or maybe I made myself feel by listening to other Tool fans, that Tool was something that I couldn't get into. That Tool was something that I couldn't like enough. I couldn't join that club because there are no casual members. There are no fair weather fans of Tool. It's like you are getting the fucking tattoos or you aren't. So here's Dave, who I forgot to ask if he has any Tool tattoos. I wouldn't be surprised. I feel like he does, but I could be wrong. Here is me and Dave talking about everything but Tool tattoos.
What up?
Hey, buddy.
How you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
All right.
Are you drinking your Maynard wine? Do you have it?
Right here. Merkin Vineyards Chupacabra Vintage 2021.
Merkin Vineyards?
Merkin Vineyards, yeah.
Clever.
His other label is Caduceus Cellars.
I don't get that reference, but okay.
Caduceus, it's the snake on the staff, the
medical staff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a Caduceus.
Oh, okay. Something every day.
Yeah.
I'm not making you drink alone. I'm drinking beer. It's not Tool themed beer, but it's Michigan themed beer.
Well, I mean, that's kind of a theme. Maynard grew up between Michigan and Ohio, so.
Did he now? See?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, you can really tell. You listened to the whole album all the way through, I take it, for this.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Did you listen through all the way to the end where there's the hidden track?
Yes.
Then like the weird spoken word afterwards?
Yeah.
It was daylight when you woke up in your ditch. You looked up at your sky. That means
After all the crickets? All right. So it just struck me when I was giving it a re-listen in preparation for this that like he sounds so Michigan in that part where he's talking, where he's like, you woke up in your grass and you looked up at your sky. He like sounds so Michigan. Like living outside of Michigan now for more of my life than I lived in it. Like I can really, really detect a Michigan accent.
Oh, sure. I didn't believe it existed until I moved to Philadelphia and people started to point it out to me, and I kind of worked on my Michigan accent. My accent. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about let's start at the beginning. Tell the good people how you and I know one another, David.
Okay, well, you and I grew up on the same block. A picture just came up in Facebook memories of us at the bus stop in elementary school with all of us with our hilarious bowl haircuts. I think I'm holding like some sort of slimy amphibian or something.
As you often were.
Yeah, your older brother and I were super tight growing up. You know, you were like a little brother to me growing up too. So I probably gave you some undue abuse, as older brothers tend to do.
Yeah, you were like a bonus older brother. Like in case mine didn't heap enough abuse on me, I had you as backup. But
Yeah,
like my older brother, I mean, you are like family to me. We've been friends. I mean, literally, you're one of the people I've known longest in my life, really, at this point.
absolutely. Yeah.
You've been like to my family reunion
Skating
and
on the
shit.
pond with you. Yeah. Family
Mhm.
reunion stuff. Super tight. Super tight.
Yet I've still not met your son.
Yeah. COVID happened.
I blame COVID.
Yeah. Like he's basically a COVID baby. We had him and then, COVID shut everything down for a couple of years. So
Yeah.
traveling has been minimal since then. Well, other than me for my job.
Other than the fact that you fly planes for a living.
Yeah.
So, how did you come to this album, to Tool's Undertow? Do you remember?
Oh man, that's so hard. I'd probably Beavis and Butthead, I would say.
Hey, Beavis. You know what this band is called? Tool. Yeah, Tool.
Okay.
I mean, more than likely it was sitting on your couch after playing Robotech or Rifts or something.
Uh-huh.
Those were role playing games that Travis and I played together with Judd.
Yeah, my brother. Yep.
Yeah, probably just late night on your couch with Beavis and Butthead playing. Like they played the sober video, and when the guy gets all crazy and he like shakes his arm
arm
at that
shaking.
one part, they definitely make some masturbation references there.
Cool. Yeah. Whoa. Yeah. If I could move my arm that fast, I'd never leave the house. Yeah.
And I think that's probably my first exposure to it, which is pretty interesting because I had a buddy over here that was in the army with me, and he just happens to live in this town now, and we were talking about this album, and he was like well in tune to Tool already at that point. He was like waiting on bated breath for this album to come out after having heard Opiate, and he's like, I was kind of let down at how like soft this was after how hard Opiate was. Like Opiate's pretty much a metal album, right?
Yeah.
And then this kind of moved into the prog realm. It's kind of like prog metal, I guess.
So I had not listened to this album in a long time. I remember hearing the single for Sober on 89X, and me and my brother, listening to this album in preparation for recording with you, it really brought me back to like being in my brother Judd's basement room at my dad's house and like kind of hanging out down there and like finding out these new bands, on the Canadian airwaves and getting into that kind of stuff. And then he actually bought the CD. And so I remember like listening to it in his room, in his basement. And I got my own copy too. I'm pretty sure I recorded a cassette off his CD, but I had not listened to this album since the mid 90s. And this is probably the Tool album I'm most familiar with, but I still had not listened to it since, I don't know, 95, 96. But one of the things that really stuck out to me was exactly what you say, that this is like prog rock. It's a lot more metal, like straightforward metal than I remembered, but it's also like almost like Led Zeppelin classic riffage.
Yeah, for sure. Adam Jones can be a riff master if he needs to be.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. I don't think I appreciated him properly. He's good.
Yeah. In preparation for this, I found out that what was their former bass player? This is like the last album he played with them.
Paul something.
Paul
the
something.
dude. Paul the something.
Well, anyways, he wanted to start playing guitar. I just learned and get somebody else to come in on bass. And like, we don't need some other asshole in this band. So they just like fired him because they're like, he wouldn't relent on wanting to also play guitar.
Yeah.
Like, nope, Adam's got it. So
yeah,
I don't know. Tool has definitely continued their trajectory fine without him, I would say.
They've done just fine. It could be argued that they prospered. What's your favorite song on this album, or like some of the standout moments on this album? What's your faves?
Let's see here. Flood is up there.
Okay.
I don't know. I just I love the big, long, swelling intro.
4 minutes or something.
Yeah, it builds that big old crescendo, and then it kind of brings you back down where it comes into the driving lyrics. That one probably, as I've gone on, has come to be closer to the top of the list. I remember back in the day, Swamp Song.
Yeah.
That was, that was like just real youthful angst. Swamp Song was probably at the forefront for me.
Yeah, that one stuck out to me. Like, even though I hadn't listened to it in a long time, I'm like, whoa, this is, I couldn't have told you the name of this song, but if I was going to just sing a random Tool song, this would probably be the one that comes to my head, that or Prison Sex.
Yeah. Oh man, and the way his voice is just all I don't know what range he has, but he's higher pitched than me, like in the vocals that I like to sing. So like trying to sing him is difficult. Maynard's vocal range, yeah, he's up there, but like when he's like threatening but at a high pitch, it's like kind of contradictory, but it's fun. I don't know. I like it.
Are there tracks that you think are weaker than others? Are there any weak tracks on the album or any criticisms that you have for the album?
I don't know, man. I do like the whole thing. I mean, it'd be hard for me to say.
Yeah, okay. That's
I really
fine.
do. I do like them all. I mean, I think it's more highlights than anything. Like 4 Degrees, I love that. This whole album is kind of steeped in the whole 90s. Like, how did we get all of these rumors without the internet back then, right? Like Marilyn Manson removing his rib to, like, blow himself or whatever.
Turns out that wasn't true.
Yeah, there's stuff like this song, 4 Degrees.
Uh-huh.
The rumor was 4 degrees is the difference in temperature between the vagina and the anus.
Oh,
so
I thought it was gonna be like climate change or something.
No, yeah, it's take it up 4 degrees higher, and there is a lot of sodomy reference in this whole album.
Yeah. So I thought that the lyrics to Prison Sex were disturbing before I sat down and read them a couple days ago. Holy fucking shit! I thought it was about rape in a prison, which is bad.
Right.
Somehow it's worse than that.
Yeah. This is one of the few songs that the band has actually come out and like leveled with people. Like, this is what this song is about. And I don't know, did you stumble into them saying that in any interviews or anything?
I mean, I didn't have to. It's really obvious when you read the lyrics what the song's about.
It's about the cycle of childhood sexual abuse.
Right.
Yeah, and how the abused frequently become the abuser without, seeking out therapy or whatever else. So
yeah, this has become some kind of temporary sanity You don't need therapy. Apparently.
Yeah.
It's a little, more than a little problematic. That said, it's probably also my favorite song on the album as far as the tune goes. I mean, I think it fucking rules.
It is stellar,
it's disturbing as shit.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It absolutely is.
So they're dark.
Yeah.
They're dark, right? This has always been something like, you know, I've got my darkness. I've always had things that attract me that are dark.
Hell, I'm drinking my wine out of a claw wine glass right now.
You've got some goth in you. Yeah, so I get it. I guess I always found Tool just like a little too dark for my taste, which is saying a lot. There's levity in their stuff too, right? I mean, like, they're not always doom and gloom.
Oh, yeah. I know, just through the lyrics and vocals standpoints, Maynard is one of the most irreverent people that you can think about. Like, look at the other projects that he's done, like
Little Pig, Let Me In from the Green Jelly.
Yeah. Green Jello to
Hey, Little Pig, let me in. Little Pig,
I had that album.
Yeah. And Pucifer, like, that's all like irreverence, lots of comedic stuff. I think he's like slightly more intelligent than the rest of your rockers out there, so his comedy can like fall on a lot of deaf ears.
They're big Bill Hicks fans, right? Which I respect.
Oh, yeah.
I love Bill Hicks, but I also feel like that attitude you just kind of got at, like that belief that they're smarter than other rock bands, or that he's like, that's kind of the vibe I've often gotten from Tool fans, and I've always just kind of been like, yeah, okay.
So we're talking about Tool fans now, right?
We don't have to.
About Tool fans. No, let's do it. Let's talk about Tool fans. So if you listeners out there don't know the reputation of Tool fans, they are some of the fans that have the worst reputation amongst fans out there, and they are rabid.
They're like the Philadelphia of music fans, right?
And Tool fans are rabid. Maynard, the singer, lives just up the hill from me. I could probably point you out the window and show you the mountain that he lives on the other side of.
Is that how you chose where you live?
No, but it is how I chose something else in life, which goes back to the rumors that we were talking about with this band.
You got a rib removed.
Yeah. No, it was my choice in MOSs in the Army, which ended up not turning out to be true. But anyways,
no shit.
So Maynard is in adult beverage making, and my wife was also in the adult beverage circle. She worked in the craft beverage industry for many years here before we had kids. Mm-hmm. So we ran in the same circles, and I worked for she worked for a distribution company that gave different beverages to his other establishments that weren't wine.
Okay.
So we got to know like the general manager of one of his places, his head chef's still a good friend, some of the other employees there. And we got invited to the Verde Valley Wine Festival one time, and I met the man.
You met Maynard?
Yeah.
All right.
Because he was kind of the honcho of this thing. Like, he's a part of the resurgence of the whole wine culture here. He saw that this place looked like Tuscany on the side of the mountain where he was living, and he started growing wines. Gio's good friend, that's my wife. I was there with my parents because I just graduated college, and my wife, and we all came together, and I met this dude, Jesse, for the first time. He was like the GM of his osteria. And he's like, oh, I saw Maynard over there. And my mom's like, hey, isn't that your rock star guy? And I'm like, yeah, Mom, that's Maynard. And Jesse's sitting there holding his wine, and he's like kind of looking out his eyelids at us like, oh God, here's these like gaper Midwesterners, like gawking at Maynard, like my mom's reaction didn't help at all. I'm like, I could be cool, really, dude.
Yeah.
Anyways, then Gio says to Jesse, like, hey, why don't you introduce Dave to Maynard? And he's like, we don't do that.
Yeah.
And we're like, what? Well, it turns out people show up armed in the small town of looking for Maynard.
Armed? Why armed?
Armed. I don't know. They're crazy. People get it in their heads that they want to do things or whatever. Anyways, it ended up being, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I'm going to bleep out the town name.
Messiah stuff. Yeah, bleep out the town name. I don't know. You know how people get when, like I said, Tool fans are rabid. They look at this as like a religion, you know? They look for these weird mathematical equations. It's all that same conspiracy stuff.
But is that shit there? Are there secret messages? Are there mathematical equations hidden in the lyrics? Is that shit there?
I don't think so, but you know, all their albums are like steeped in the symbology, and you know, they do like to look into all of that like spirit realm stuff and like ancient temple writings and all that stuff. Like
Yeah.
if you go onto their website, they all talk about it. So, you know, you're gonna attract some people that take that stuff a little bit too far.
Who's the artist?
That's Adam Jones. Adam Jones does all of the claymation
guitarist.
and yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. And he does all of the posters and all that stuff, all that psychedelic shit that's associated with them. Okay, so that's very much coming out of the band. I knew that he did the artwork of Undertow. I didn't know that he's done all their artwork, right? He's like their guy.
Yeah, and like he did all the claymation in the videos and everything. Like most of the band members, if I recall, had something to do with working in Hollywood on sets and doing like production stuff.
Yeah, I know the bass player did.
These videos, for the 2 videos, I think there were only 2 videos they released for this. Adam did the claymation for him for Prison Sex and Sober.
There was a video for Prison Sex. That was their second single for this album.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. Shit, Blood, and Cum on My Hands was their second single.
Yeah, absolutely.
That must have been, I guess, before or after they had to like release the Walmart version of this album that was just like a barcode without the obese lady inside and all that, the naked woman.
Yeah, I remember it. That was like artwork unlike I had seen on another album before, you know.
Yeah.
Adam Jones did make the sculpture that they photographed. That's a sculpture
of ribs.
The ribs on the front.
Yeah.
And I remember finding out through that, you know, 90s rumor vine, you could hold it up and it was like the tendrils of those ribs or like the sculpture would embrace the obese lady who was like, you know, in a fetal position floating in a blue lit pool or something. But if you like held it up to the light, it would impose itself on it. So it was like she was being embraced by the tendrils of that sculpture.
And that's purposeful.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, that's what the rumor mill says anyways, but it worked.
Okay, the rumor mill.
It might be Pink Floyd over Wiz, you know.
So if Tool is like this super intelligent Bill Hicks of a band, then why do they seem to attract, you know, InfoWar types?
I don't know, man. It's just like anything. Why is QAnon popular? You know, it's people who love things like conspiracies. They love things like trying to figure it out without being told, and they come to their own conclusions. You know, it's probably all just part of the same psychological mindset that allows people to do things like follow QAnon and whatever.
Or even like the same impulse that makes us see a face in a tree or whatever. Like you're looking for meaning, whether it's there or not. And they're a band that, you know, it's cryptic and it sounds serious, and you know, they are infusing some stuff in there. Like you said, there is very real symbology used lyrically, used in their artwork and all that kind of stuff. So it does compute.
Yeah, but then you pick up the bottom of the case where the CD sits and look at the artwork underneath the pig in the back, and it's a cow licking its butthole too. So
I do remember that. I remember like that was like a special secret. Like, hey, if you open up the back, you can look at a picture of a cow licking its own ass.
Yep.
Art.
There's that irreverence, you know.
Was there ever a point where this album kind of like faded to the back and you were more focused on other albums, or is this what maybe other Tool albums, or has this always been in regular rotation for you?
You know, it's definitely faded in the rotation a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I was an early adopter of MP3s. I even tried to build an MP3 player that I could attach to my car stereo before they had such a thing as MP3 players.
Okay.
I've abandoned all my physical copies of everything. I've gone over, so I burned it all, and then they're all sitting, you know, in a storage place somewhere or something. That has lent me to listening to a lot of things on just random rotation, right? If a song off this album pops up, except for maybe the end of Disgustipated, I don't think I really need to like listen to 60 minutes of crickets or whatever. But if these songs come on, I don't skip them.
So, but you don't sit down and like listen to it as an album in full anymore. But it sounds like you don't really do that with albums generally anymore.
Yeah, no, I do. Like I'm wearing this Aesop shirt. Yeah, I listen to this album straight through, and you know, I do. I like to get to know an album first, all the way through.
I see.
I like to listen to it. You know, the old tape days. Like I like to know the flow and like be able to sing the start of the next song after the other one. And like artists a lot of times intend flows,
Mm-hmm.
you know, unless their producers tell them to do something otherwise or whatever.
Especially something like this, there's intentionality behind it, right?
Yeah,
The
for
layout.
sure. I'll give this a good listen through every now and then. And like I got to say, just Tool in general hasn't been heavily in my rotation lately. I mean, their last album came out, Beer Inoculum, in 2019, I think, in the spring of 2019.
Okay, so that's the most recent one, was 2019. That was like 13 years in the making or something, right? Did you ever see them live?
Oh, I've probably seen them like maybe 7 or 8 times. I can't recall the amount. Yeah, let's see. The first time I saw them was, I think it was probably 2002, I think is the first time I saw them.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was in South Carolina with some Army buddies when I was in the Army.
Okay.
Big arena show.
Yeah.
I think that was before they really started getting into their, oh, wait, no, I absolutely lie. I remember the first time I saw them. It was in 1996.
Okay.
It was here in Arizona. I was down in Tempe. It was at an outdoor amphitheater. And Maynard had announced that one of the band members had just moved to this lovely state of Arizona. And it was an awesome show, big mosh pit, lots of fun, good lights and everything. But I remember, man, there's just this, back to the Tool fans. It's weird because Tool, you know, they're like the cusp of metal, the cusp of prog. They'll attract the heavy fans that like don't really like to think about the music just because it's heavy, right?
Sure.
And then I just remember there was this like drunk frat boy type guy behind me. And the whole time, it was right after Lateralis was released. So this was the tour for Lateralis. And I remember there's that See It Down in Arizona Bay lyric, and this drunk frat boy is just like, Arizona Bay? You hear that? We're here to Arizona Bay. And I'm like, oh God. Yeah, that's
fun.
Yeah, that's a standout of that point. But yeah, Tool fans, they're the best.
Yeah, you make a good point that Tool is kind of at this weird nexus where I could see, you know, someone who's a fan of Rush or someone who's a fan of Pantera or someone who's a fan of Ozzy or someone who's a fan of like, you know, Dillinger Escape Plan. I could see anybody who's like super huge into any of those kinds of extremes being into Tool.
Yeah.
Now, here's a question I have for you about this album specifically, especially since you stuck with them and I fell off. I stopped listening after this album. I mean, I've heard their other stuff. I've heard all of it, you know, but not all of it, but I heard a lot of it. I tuned out for sure around Anima sometime. But did they keep this style or did they move away from this, would you say?
I mean, they have evolved, I guess. So with evolution, there's always a moving away from. But man, they have kept some heavy moments and they still do really rock. I guess the sound has just evolved. They've refined themselves more, but I don't think it has stepped that much away from their origins here.
Okay.
And like I was talking with my buddy Josh, talking about wanting it to have been more heavy after Opiate was, I did some reading about this just in preparation of talking, and it turns out that like they had already all of this material for this album together, and they had all of the stuff from Opiate. It could have all been one giant thing, right?
That's what I thought. Yeah, okay. I've read that too.
Apparently, the studio wanted them to release their heaviest stuff first. So they had them like scramble together and record. And that's why I think a lot of it's live recordings is because they just wanted them to put out their heaviest stuff first.
A lot of Opiate is live recordings, you're saying? Okay.
Yeah. So they did that, and Opiate was wildly more popular than they thought it was going to be. And then they're like, we got to get you in the studio for more.
I'm guessing that's why they got Sylvia Massey to produce Rick Rubin's kind of protege.
Yeah.
I mean, she's definitely somebody of some renown, but she was kind of up and coming at that point.
I think she also worked with Green Jelly at the time.
Yeah, that's true. I think she was kind of instrumental in getting them discovered, really.
Yeah, probably. I guess they were friends. Like they all used to, you know, party in their like LA. We're trying to make it crash pad places or whatever. And
gotcha.
Yeah, I think they were all just friends.
Do you know how old they were?
They were all a little bit older than your standard up and comers because they all had.
That's what I thought.
Previous lives doing other things before they got popular into music.
Like late 20s, early 30s, maybe?
Man, let's talk about some more of the rumors. So,
okay.
Another rumor about this band and era and album and how they got together was that Maynard was accidentally discovered by screaming at a guy on the road by Danny Carey. Danny Carey heard Maynard just screaming at a guy, and he's like, "Your voice is great. You should come sing for our band." Like that was.
Is that true?
No, absolutely not. That's absolutely not true at all. Like,
okay, all right. It's a good story though.
Maynard, when he was living in Michigan, had a band based in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I think they were called Children of CAD. What was it called? They were Children of the Anachronistic Dynasty. That was the name of his band. And
a terrible name.
Yeah. If you look it up, they've got a video out there on the YouTubes about this band playing and Maynard singing. Like, basically, it's the origins of Sober.
Okay.
You know, before the other musicians got their hands on it and turned it into a kick-ass song.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's funny. Let's see, another rumor. Maynard was psychological operations in the Army.
Which turns out not to have been true.
Turns out not to have been true. Another rumor, I don't know whether or not this is true or not, but so in my meeting with him that day, when I did end up talking to Maynard at the thing, I heeded all my buddies' warnings and like, you know, I wasn't like overbearing or anything. I talked to Maynard about wine and stuff, but I did join the Army and I did join PSYOP because I knew nothing about it. And I heard Maynard had done that, right?
Your whole life trajectory.
Yeah.
Off a rumor.
Yeah. I ended up joining PSYOP. Well, it was just education too. You know, I learned about it and it was very, very interesting place to be in the Army. But
yeah, I bet.
In this conversation with Maynard, I was like, "So you were in the Army, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, it was cool. I did my 4 years and got out. And like, that's why I offer, veterans discounts at all my places because I know how hard it is and everything." And I'm like, "Oh, cool. Yeah. So you were PSYOP? Because I did that too." And he's like, "No, man." He's like, "I was like a 73 something or whatever. I was a field surveyor. You know, the guy who stands out there with the thing. Like, that's what I did in the Army." And I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "Oh, no, well, I really was PSYOP." I'm like, "Where does that come from then?" And he's like, "Well, people just assumed that in interviews. And they would ask me like, so you were PSYOP, right?" And he says he would just like cross his arms, lean back and like give him the look out of the top of his eyes, you know, and like not say anything. And he's like, "Yeah, it's my own personal joke. I just let him run with it, you know?"
We're blowing up that myth here.
Yeah. Let's see. The other myth about it, that he had gone to the USMA Preparatory Academy, which is West Point. That's U.S. Military Academy. Uh-huh. He had done so well in PSYOP that they said, "You need to go to the USMA and become an officer," which I don't know if that's true or not, but I think that stems from where he's going, "You lie, cheat, and steal, and I cannot tolerate." I think that's, I don't know, a slogan, a motto, or whatever the USMA is. Like, "A cadet will not lie, cheat, steal, nor tolerate those who do."
Oh, okay.
That's where that comes from. So I don't know if he just knew that from whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. Other rumors about this album.
To be debunked.
I don't know. There's a whole bunch of them. I just remember it was steeped in, like, mythology back then. And
it still is. The band has kind of thrived in this weird space of him leaning back and glaring at people and letting them think whatever they want to think about him and his band, it seems.
Yeah, and that's
not a bad way to go. I mean, it's
good poker playing, you know, like they didn't appear in any of their videos, right?
Not where you could see their faces.
That goes to some of the whole ethos of their album. So they wanted this album to be their own formula. So after it was recorded, they had a production engineer try to like chop down and cut the fat out of a bunch of songs. Mm-hmm. To like fit the radio playability formula. Yeah. I read in one of the rare interviews that they actually had back then, they were like, "No, we want our own formula. You know, we want to be us. We don't want to be like the radio formula out there. We don't."
Right.
So that's why we got such a, I think, you know, complex and weird and deep and meandering album such as this, you know?
They're certainly an iconoclastic band, which I guess they're going to draw iconoclastic people to them, which makes sense. When we wrap this up, which we're getting towards the end here, when we wrap this up, what song would you like to go out to or from the album?
I mean, it's got to be Sober. It's got to be.
All right.
I mean,
All right. That's a good one to end with.
speaking of like iconic, it's just like that well of that guitar with like it like crescendos up, like they turn the volume up as the feedback brings it in. That it's amazing, man. It still gives me chills to listen to it. It's such a good beginning of a song.
It's a really well-produced album and a really well-played album. Before we move on to the last question, is there anything else you wanted to address while you've got the Undertow floor?
Yeah, I don't know. Y'all should check it out. It's a lot of fun. I just discovered that this exists. But that last oddball song, Disgustipated, it's kind of like post-industrial. I guess industrial is still raging then, so it's kind of industrial, whatever. They went out on like the equivalent of Craigslist back then, whatever it was, like the local find a page, and they paid $200 for 2 pianos. And outside of the recording studio, there's a parking garage, and I guess the studio owns it. And this is not a myth because there's video evidence of it. Maynard actually took, and the sounds, which the driving sound of that song is a shotgun. And they actually recorded Maynard shooting a shotgun at that piano a bunch. And the video's out there. It's fun. It's on Sylvia Massey's personal YouTube, actually.
Oh, that's funny. Didn't they also sledgehammer them?
Yeah, I guess some of the guys from Rollins' band were there when Henry was recording with them, and they all like started like beating the crap. Or was that even Black Flag back then? I don't know.
That would have been Rollins' band at that point. Which is funny, like listening to this now, I'm like, as a kid, I did not I knew who Henry Rollins was even when this came out, because Liar and that kind of stuff was a pretty big single around the same time. But listening to it the other night, I'm like, oh shit, that's Henry Rollins. Like very clearly, there he is, Henry Rollins blowing in.
Yeah, Henry Rollins has appeared on a bunch of different albums, like Les Claypool albums and stuff too.
Yeah, he
gets around.
A collaborator. Yeah. All right, so I've got some questions unrelated to Tool for you to wrap things up here. The 1990s questions for you. So 1993 was a big year for comic books. So I've got some iconic moments in comic books, and I want you to tell me what you think is the most important. Not necessarily the best.
Okay.
But what's the most important? Because these things all happened in 1993. DC announced the death of Superman. That was that. Remember when they killed Superman? For a minute. That happened. That was a big deal. While he had been introduced a couple years prior, Deadpool #1 was released in 1993.
All right.
The Tick was canceled by New England Comics in 1993. DC announced the Vertigo offshoot where they would host their adult themed stories like Hellblazer and Sandman and my favorite Transmetropolitan and Preacher.
Yeah.
Hellboy first appeared as a character, and the first webcomics went up on the internet. What's the most important?
I mean, man, they're all pretty consequential.
Right?
Yeah, I never was the biggest comic fan. I collected a lot of Spawn. I enjoyed the Spawn stuff, but how can you avoid comic stuff, especially these days?
Well, even in 1993.
Yeah, I think the death of Superman has to be just like the most important, the most consequential thing that happened, because then stuff just got all kind of chaotic and muddled after that.
They had to reset the whole DC universe after that eventually. But you're right. I remember that lasted for years. Like people talked about it. Like it was like, as far as comic book events goes, it still seems like one of the biggest ever.
Yeah. And then it seems like there were some foibles in like him reemerging as like 4 different super people or whatever. And all that.
They kind of fucked up that.
Yeah. I mean, no wonder why DC's flopping around these days, because the source material doesn't give them like a whole lot of greatness to begin with. Yeah.
Yeah, if they stick too closely to it, they're going to flop around themselves. I would argue that the creation of Vertigo was a big deal, because it kind of set up this whole, a lot of that stuff is still influencing culture.
Yeah,
today,
absolutely. I mean, I was really blissfully unaware of it at the time. Was it like kind of like looking for like an indie collaborative type, looking for up and come, or like, I'm not really sure. Like
it was like where they could put all this stuff that was more serious, like more adult theme, not like, pornographic, but more, even though they had Lobo like killing and fucking left and right over at DC, they still kind of created this whole other place for more like adult themes, like that were not necessarily for kids.
So we get fun stuff like The Boys
Yeah.
and whatever these days.
Yeah. Which kind of, exactly. That kind of paved the way to
Yeah, I
stuff like The
gotcha.
Boys
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That's consequential as well. That was probably the other thing I was leaning towards. But as far as, Jerry Seinfeld moments,
Yeah. It's probably
Superman is it.
him
Yeah.
dying is probably that, and the Infinity Gauntlet are probably the two most famous comic book moments in history. But you're not the biggest comic book guy, so maybe I picked the wrong question for you. But it's a crapshoot. Never know what you're going to get. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. How was the wine?
Oh, it's delicious. It's this is like one of the more accessible ones he does. It's let's see here. Dry winter, slightly cooler spring led to bud break. And he goes off on this whole thing on the label. Anyways, I'm pretty sure it's a red blend. It's pretty tasty. It was made in Wilcox, Arizona. It's an estate wine. Anyways, Chupacabra, yeah, it's one of the less expensive ones. His wines run the gamut.
Gotcha.
I'm sure he's got some name recognition that allows him to charge, but he does make really good wines too. So, yeah, he surrounds himself with good, knowledgeable people, and good wine comes from it.
And good music too. All right, man.
Yeah, I hope that you come up with a good, signing off catchphrase or whatever, but I find it endearing that you do what you do with the last two episodes that I've heard, so.
Can't quite nail that down, and we can just kind of let this flounder out too. I'm going to stop recording now. All right, I'm going to talk about the pandemic. Hang on, deal with that. I'm sorry, I know. But there was a point, like early in the pandemic, where it was like, oh, thank God for Zoom, thank God for FaceTime or whatever. I can like interact with somebody even if I have to see their face through a screen. And then that started to get like super tedious and weirdly draining and no longer a good substitute for actual interaction. But that, kind of overdone part of my life, at least for me, is over. So I've kind of been enjoying Zoom again and having the opportunity to talk with some people that some are kind of far or very busy. But, so it was really nice to spend some time with my old friend, Dave Horning, my old family friend, Dave Horning, I should say, and have some drinks with him and some laughs and talk about one of his favorite bands, Tool. The 1993 album Undertow by the band Tool. The songs were played by Maynard Keenan, Adam Jones, Danny Carey, and Paul D'Amour, listed as Most Stresticator, Bastardometer, Membrophanes, and Bottom Feeder, which is fun. It was produced by Sylvia Massey and released on Zoo Entertainment. If you want to pick it up on a physical copy, you can buy a CD of this album just through Amazon if you want to for $12. I bet that the vinyl is out there as well, but I'm not going to look it up. You could go to Tool's YouTube account and listen to a good remastered version of this album if you want to, and make sure they get paid for it. If you want to contact me, you could find me on Facebook, and I think I'm actually going to open a Twitter account, I think. You could email me at 9394podcast@gmail.com. If you want to come on this podcast, you can. Just get in touch with me. Let me know which album you want to do. Ideally, it'd be an album that I'm also interested in talking about, admittedly. I guess there's two ways I can approach any given album that I do on this podcast. Either it's going to be something that I genuinely love and want to talk about, or something that I genuinely think is an important album and I want to hear someone else talk about. Either one of these cases is good. There are admittedly some albums that are important and by some people's standards good that I might not want to do, but they're pretty few and far between. So if you want to come on this podcast, please do. Get in touch with me. I think it'd be nice if someone came on to talk about the band Therapy, ? Therapy? I never understood having a question mark in a band name, but that's the name of the band, Therapy, ? They released 2 albums in 93 and 94. One in 93 is their EP, Hats Off to the Insane. And in 1994, they released their full-length album, Troublegum. Both of these albums have the same song, Screamager, which I use to start this very podcast. The very first notes you hear on this podcast are from Screamager. So, if someone wants to come on and talk Therapy or any other band, do let me know. It'd be cool to have you come on. It'd be great. I'm starting to get like a decent group of people that are interested in coming on regularly, and so we're going to have some of the same voices, which is great, like a rotating cast of guest hosts. But you could pop on once, you could join the roster and come on regularly. You know, who knows? It's up to you. So, yeah, that's it. Okay. Oh shit, I gotta come up with an outro. Sorry. Not really that great at this whole podcasting thing. You know, it's a hobby. A music podcast with Travis Roy is a labor of love. It is not and never will be monetized. Please don't sue.
I know you gave me my chance to fill in any blanks that I missed, but I thought of one much after the fact. Danny Carey is one of the best rock drummers living today. I would be remiss to not talk about his skills. I remember driving around with Steve, who was in awe of Danny Carey's abilities, and he just brought to light that drummers could be better than other drummers. I just didn't even really pay attention, even though I played drums in marching band in high school or whatever. But yeah, Danny Carey is amazing. I don't know if you can fit this in somewhere in the podcast, make the awkward outro go even more awkwarder. Cool.